Welcome to Africans in London TV or AIL TV. My name is Freddy Macha. I'm a writer, musician, and entertainer. And my sound man here, Miss Technician and producer is Mr. JJ Adamson. So we're a team and we are ready to rock. Today we are going further to the history of the internet. We're looking at one of the aspects that started a long time ago, over 20 years ago, called blogging. Before we had Instagram, Facebook, we had all these WhatsApp and Telegram and so forth. We had something called blogging. I had blogging from my young brother called Sanjo Macha, who introduced blogging to part of East Africa, certain parts of East Africa. And then over the years, we had a fantastic surge. And people say blogging is citizen journalism. Some of them say is you can make money with it. Some say it's free to go. People publishing uh, people pictures, still pictures, or they use copyright. Blogging is a big subject. But I'm not an expert, although I blog as well, or have blogged. And there's vlogs. I've vlogged as well on YouTube. Um, to share that, because Africans in London is about sharing and about showcasing Africans and black people of black or African origin, I have three guests who are quite exciting. They're diverse. They're both from the same region, but they do different things over the years. They have a reputation. They build their names on blogging. I have Che Miche Mponda, who started out as a journalist for Daily News, the biggest newspaper, English newspaper, speaking newspaper in Tanzania back in the 80s. She'll correct me if I'm messing around with the dates, and
That's
she'll
correct.
elaborate on that further. And we have Majid Mjengwa, who is very actively known as not just a journalist, photojournalist, photo cameraman. He's also running street and rural things, blogging, constantly using social media very well. We'll talk in detail when we speak to him. And then we have Mubelwa Bandio, who is a broadcaster, creator of programs, and is based in the States. But he's got in touch with so many different aspects of the world. And he's a radio man. He'll elaborate that. He's on the right side. Before we go on too much with that, I'd like to introduce the subject of blogging and ask, first we start with the ladies. Um, Chemi Chemponda in the middle, as you can see, well dressed. You're also an actress. You've done some movies. You've done a lot of blogging. You get Swahili Time is your blog, and you had a reputation, Daily News, for big scoops. For instance, you once uh, unfollowed a very very big pedophile with
Yes, I exposed it.
yes, expose him, and he's done now. You're the first, you're the last person to speak to the musician Remy Ongala, the
Yes.
world music star. Remy Ongala was very massive in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He passed away, but you were the last person to speak to him, and so many other things. So before we spoke about that, can you tell us what you think blogging is?
I mean, like you said, blogging is like a citizen journalism. So, unlike when you're working for a newspaper, which is regulated and you have your editors and your material passes through editors, and like when you're a reporter, they assign you stuff. So when you have a blog, you as an individual, you choose what you want to write about, but at the same time you're editing it, you're responsible for the content. So in a way you're self-publishing interest, I mean, material which you think might interest people. And I look at stuff which is going to interest me, stuff which is relevant to particularly Tanzania, people of the Tanzanian origin, and I post that there on my blog Swahili Time.
Swahili time.
Yes, Swahili Time.
Why? Why? Why did you call it Swahili time?
Well, when Actually, what happened was Michuzi, the most famous blogger in Tanzania, he told me, start a blog, start a blog. So I started a blog, and it was the same day. I think our first blog was like Chemi isms, and then I had like Bongo Wood or something, and then a Swahili time. I was just thinking, what can I call? And Swahili time is the language of Tanzania, and then time to speak Swahili, um, things which to deal with Swahili. So I said, okay, let me call it Swahili time. And from that Swahili time, other blogs have become up Swahili Times, Swahili this, Swahili Villa, Swahili this. But I think I'm the original Swahili time.
Yeah, creative individual. How was the transition from mainstream media, like daily news, into blogging? Is it a smooth
Well,
transition? Or
yeah, I mean, basically, I hadn't worked in a newspaper for many years, maybe 10 years or 8 years before I started that blog. And the transition, it was just learning how because I think a blog was new, so I was learning how to use the aspects. So they give you sign up for the blog, and then you have to learn how to insert your pictures, how to format stuff, how to um how to do things. So that was the most important thing, was learning how to format blog. And then as I went along, learning how long a blog should be, what type of things interest people. And I also inserted a lot of links. So I would say, like, for more information, click here. Bofia hapa. Click here if you want more information. So I would give you like a tease, and then if you want more information, click here. Because like you said in your introduction, a lot of stuff is copyrighted on the blogs. And copyright is an important thing. And for instance, my blog had a lot of original material, which is stuff which I wrote personally. I researched it myself, and I would write it up myself. But then I noticed people were taking that information, and they were not quoting me, they were not crediting me. So that's an infringement on my copyright as well, because I'm the original author. So, out of respect, I always say, I always quote people, or I always say I got this from this place, and that's just blogging respect. But I think a lot of bloggers in Tanzania, I have to say, I don't think they follow those rules. They would just take it and say, this is my material. So,
come into that because it's a very heated subject about copyright. Uh,
mhm.
Thank you, Chemponda Chemi Chemi. That's your name, which means stream in Swahili, right? Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yes. So let's introduction about you. So we're gonna go to a friend on the Majid Mjengwa, who is known as a photojournalist. You're multilingual as well. You speak several languages. Africans, we're very talented with languages. Tell our viewers you speak your mother tongue, you speak Swahili, you speak Swedish, and so forth and forth. But how did you start, Majid? How did you start the whole business of journalism and media and blogging?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred, being part of this program. I started blogging 2006. My story is quite similar to that Chemi. I met Michuzi 2006. Michuzi was the first blogger, when your brother and Desanjo was in Finland. So he got the idea of starting blog to Michuzi, and Michuzi started way back 2005, and I was one of his follower. So once 2006, I met him in Dar es Salaam, World Food Restaurant, and I told him that I had an idea of contributing to his blog, Michuzi blog, pictures from rural areas, because I saw that he was focusing much on urban areas. He was also traveling quite much to abroad, but I wanted to contribute to Michuzi blog with images from the rural areas. Since I was based in Iringa with my family, I worked with FDC, Folk Development Colleges. So I traveled extensively in the rural areas. So Michuzi told me, why don't you start your own blog that will focus much on the rural areas, images. So that was how I started. I started to post pictures from rural areas, telling everyday stories of common man and woman in Tanzania areas. And I started to get much of people following me, mostly from the diaspora. Uh, so that's how I started.
Mjengo, personally, I start to notice you because my brother Ndesanjo was mentioning your blogs were quite unusual, and you were not copying pictures. You were copying and pasting. You were going to the villages. You were going to very remote and head of areas where even the mainstream newspapers were not covering. But you started as a photographer. Are you a photographer or a writer, or you did both?
Yeah, I acquired my first camera, Yashica, when I was 17. So I started to take pictures when we were staying at Biafra, Kinondoni, Biafra, with my family. So I was very much interested with pictures. I was Shebe, the guy you worked with, Freddy, was one of my role model, Ernest Miringa, and others, including Michuz as well. So I developed interest in taking pictures, but I also started with my mom. Since I was a little boy, 4 or 5 years, my mom worked with the government press. She was like a bookbinder, so she used to come back home images and text. So I started very early liking pictures and images. So when I finished my military service, national service, 91, I decided to move to a rural area to Ulembwe in Jombe. I volunteered in one of the FDC, Ulembwe FDC. So I did also travel quite much with my bike to other marketplaces and took pictures, and I was correspondent, sending pictures to Daily News. So that's how I have that interest from since I was 5 years old.
With your bike, because it's becoming a reputation. Very rare. That's a very rare thing. I mean, not motorbike, but bicycle. That's like incredible. We'll go into that in a bit later. So we know a little bit about Mjengo Majid. Thank you, Majid. We're gonna go to Mubelo Bandio, which is tongue twister name. Mubelo, you're a broadcaster. You create programs. You have a radio show. You have a Kwanzaa Productions. Can you tell a bit about how you started your initial show? How did you go into media in general?
Media in general. First, I'll say I think I was born to do these media things uh, because I loved radio from I don't remember when. I used to rush. This is back then when I was maybe in standard two, standard three. Back then, I was able to tell the voice of almost recognize the voice of every broadcaster Radio Tanzania. So it was just for somebody to say, hii ni taarifa ya habari kutoka Radio Tanzania. And then even before they mention their name, I'll be like Charles Hillary, Julius Nyesanga, yoyote. I loved it from then. But when I moved to actually before I moved to the US, I went and worked with Times FM, Times Radio. That's where I started. That's my foundation when it comes to radio. Um, and then pretty much all they did is just pour more gasoline into the fire that was in me back then. In 2003, when I moved up here to the US, I started working with Jumbo Radio in UK and other medias. But back then it wasn't as easy as it is right now. In 2008, I remember I started the same thing like Jamie and Mjengo said. I started contributing to some of the blogs. So it was Michuzi, was Hakingoi, and I used to send stories, mostly original, some events, whatever happened here. I'll go to the reggae concert and then take pictures, write the story, and I started sending to them. Sometimes they were timely stories that if they didn't get to it, sometimes because of different time zones and everything, then I'll feel like the story is dead. So as we did that couple of time, Michuzi was like, why don't you start your own blog? So this is one thing about Michuzi, that he encouraged people, even though he was famous, he could have kept all the stories and everything, but he was like, "You can start your own blog. If you need my help, let me know." And it was like that. And August 25th, 2008, that was my first post on my blog, it's Changamoto Yetu, but the title is "The Way You See the Problem is the Problem." And there's catch to that.
The blog. The first blog, what was it? Your first blog.
My
I mean,
first
the
blog
blogger.
is
Was this blog?
this is my first blog, Changamoto Yetu. Changamoto Yetu was it's like the address, but it's "The Way You See the Problem is the Problem." That's the title, and that's been my only blog.
You always work with two languages, Swahili and English, right?
Yes,
Correct?
yes.
Okay. So with a little bit of taste of three of you, so let's go to the next part of it, which is let's look at blogging itself intrinsically. You all have, it has to do with the word reporting, because I'm coming from the traditional journalist medium where you report, you go and find a story and you report it, you bring it, whether it's a radio or TV, you bring the story. So how different, if somebody was listening to this and they want to learn blogging, how different it is it? Do you have to go out and find stories that you can just copy them from somewhere and put them in your blog and hope for adverts and money?
So for me, I'll say money has changed a lot, and in good and bad way, unfortunately. But when I first started, we were not so many. I remember back then, I would wake up in the morning, I'll go to Swahili Time, I'll go to Michuzi. It was just, and almost everybody was specializing on something. Back then, you'll know that if I want to know what's going on this, I'll go to this. If I want to learn about something, I'll go to this blog. And such. I'll go to Bongo Celebrity if I want to know if there's something trending about artists and everything. Back then was first somebody you get your passion, or it'll be a topic. Like for me, it was Monday something about health. Friday will be something about reggae. People used to come knowing that I'm going to Changamoto Youth blog on this day just to get this. Do you have to go out? Things have changed right now. You have to go search and research, but maybe not really like going out. I used to sit down, read about all these songs and maybe artists, and then reflect. So let's say I didn't go to Jamaica to get the song. Like on Friday, I used to write about the song and how it relates to our lives and my readers' life and stuff. And I'll give you an example. Like Morgan Heritage, they released the song called "Nothing to Smile About." "Nothing to Smile About" is the story about how people outside Jamaica think of Jamaica and what's the reality of things in Jamaica, right? And that was the topic for that day. Did I go out to search it? Did I go to Jamaica? No, because almost everything was there. Everything was the internet. But all I did is just to bring that idea to my audience in Tanzania that yes, maybe there's not so much to smile about, even though if you read on the internet, they'll tell you how sweet Tanzania is, the paradise, it's the place to be, and all this stuff. And then at the end, you have to conclude with call for action. What should we do? We shouldn't just sit here and do this. Let's take step. Let's do something. So I think money making people to lose that focus and just get the hits and number and subscribers. But remember, 2008, 2009 was like the sweetest time to go on the blog because you could read. We had professors, Professor Mbele, Professor Matondo. Those people were just giving all this stuff. It was great.
Thank you, Mo Bandio. Your insight is different. So thank you. Chemiche, as a female or woman journalist who exposed that pedophile, Maumba his name, would you do the same thing you did in Daily News in a blog? Would you expose a big pedophile like that in your blog?
Well, actually, I would have more freedom to write the actual details. I mean, had I had a blog at the time when Maumba came about, because I think if you remember, the press in Tanzania, the culture was very conservative. They didn't even talk about pedophilia. They didn't talk about sex abuse. I mean, abusing children, that was considered taboo. So when I exposed Maumba, it was like a real breakthrough, because if you look at the archives of Daily News, the first reports of Maumba was like one or two paragraphs, and I had to fight just to get those two paragraphs, and I had to use my context, through the government, literally, to get them to start talking about this. But once we broke that through, started publishing about, hey, this incident, then the other media became open now to talk to it. They also jumped on the topic, and especially when Maumba was finally brought to court, that's when it blew up now. And then other pedophiles became exposed besides Maumba. But Maumba was one of the worst. I mean, that guy. I mean, if the real story, what appeared in the newspaper was just the tip of the iceberg of what really happened. Now, had I had a blog which I personally could control, more, I tell you, so much more would have been exposed. Can't hear you, Freddie.
Um, Mjengwa, Majid, you
Yeah.
go out in the streets and you go into markets, you go into rural areas, you go very remote areas, but you're not bothered by the no, news or things that are happening. Sometimes you might do stuff on Instagram, but you're much more interested in the things that are not in the news. How is that different from, say, Michuzi? Do you find it is that exciting you more?
Yes, indeed. I'm very much interested in people and life, everyday life. And I, being a teacher by profession, specializing in folk and adult education, I see my blog or my social media activities as an extended classroom, whatever you can call it, platform for what I'm doing daily. And I see that Mjengo blog, for instance, was a platform for debates. I initiated a number of debates into society from writing for I, but now I moved to Mjengwa blog. It was very exciting to see that a number of people were engaging in different debates in society, and this also brought some fundamental change, some transformation in society. Um, so that was also my interest to see how I can be more creative using social media, blogging. I'm the first blogger, not many people know that, who's introduced a newspaper kind of highlights. It was new, nobody had it before. And I got a lot of critics from even some media fellows who say that by putting newspaper headlines in your blog, it's like you undermine the revenues, the interest of the newspapers, media houses. And today, it's a common practice. I was also the one who introduced for the first time in Tanzania online radio connected to Mjengwa blog. And we could cooperate with a local radio in Iringa, Nuru FM. The first thing, we could even got a fund from TMF, Tanzania Media Fund, for that kind of innovation. But that's originated from Mjengwa blog. I'm always trying to see what are the new things that one can do? Because today, when we sit here talking about blogs, the new generation might think that we are trying to dig into the history. If you ask 10 youth in Tanzania if they have visited, when did they visit any blog recently, I think the answer might be two of them, two of eight, because now it's more of Instagram, more of the Facebook and other social media platform. So the blog has become the thing of the past for those who are doing research, but not like it used to be when we did blogging during those the past 10 years or 15 years ago. So I try always to see what the need of the society, and I always trying to change. So today I'm doing much in the Instagram and Facebook, and I see that my debate discussion are now moved to Instagram and social and Facebook.
It's true. There's a internet is always changing. Is a fast changing media. So the way
Yeah.
blogging was, then we have vlogging, we have. But you're using three of you are using different things, talking about the same thing. So can you tell me? Because I'm from the '70s where we used to report. You go to your editor with your story, and the editor look at the story, and say, no, 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 don't do this. Then you go back and you have to do it again. But then you're living in an era where you can do what you want, and this freedom has made the quality of sometimes of doing things is quite different. Do you think people need training nowadays because it say Njengwa, um, you've talked about Thomas Sankara yesterday, yeah. You read his book in Swedish, and then you interpreted it in Instagram for somebody who had never heard of Sankara, who was not born then, or he doesn't know Sankara very well. It was quite easy because it's quite short. So, do
Yeah,
you think you need to be innovative individuals to be in this medium?
absolutely.
Sawin Jengwa.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is also something that we have to think of because the generation of today, generation, they don't really read long articles. If you write 1,000 words, nobody, very few people dare to read that. But if you kind of write shortly, but it should be of interest, uh, yeah, people do that. And for me, for instance, I also started something like Bongo Hapo Zamani. It's more of the history. I see the new generation, they really like to know what's happened in the past. If you talk about culture and imagery, Freddy Macha, and if I write a little bit of Freddy Macha's in the 80s, I read about culture images. So then people want to know about Freddy Macha. I take that as an example. So you need to introduce something short, and then you see that it can generate interest from the readers. So this is a kind of blogging that we have to do now to transform ourselves.
Thank you, Majid. Bandio, this is a question for you, Mubelwa. So you've
Yep.
moved from Tanzania, East Africa, to live in the States, and
Yes.
you're running your show. You're very enthusiastic. I listen to your radio programs. You're reporting the news. You are interviewing all kinds of people in your programs. So is there a difference working here and working home? Is there a difference anywhere in
Yes,
Tanzania or
sure,
in Africa?
sure. Yes, yes, there is. Difference in environment, um, infrastructures, that being infrastructure by whether it's that's provided by government, whether it's electricity and the internet, but equipment too. You know, better equipment makes it easier for you to get your job done. And I feel it sometimes for some people prices. Like right now, the way we can do interview and upload this stuff and download some stuff and get all this whatever we need to get our job done is it's a little bit different here compared to how it is back home. Not that we don't have the same passion or maybe we're not committed the same, but like I say, the internet could be a little bit slower and sometimes the power and all this stuff. So it's different from that point of view. If I had to work here and there, but is it also different because of the environment regulations? Yes. That Achemi just said how people used to go there and just get all this stuff from her blog and repost them. Copyright issue here, it's more serious than it is back home, and sometimes it's depressing. I'll be here sitting interviewing somebody. By the time I'm done with that interview, some people have already downloaded my video, cut it in pieces, put some really nice fancy catchphrases, titles, and get the hits they want and make all the money, even without crediting the person who did that. I remember that happened a couple of times that I it took me 4 days to get the person to book, pay for that, go get them, put them over here for the interview. Before you're done, they've cut your interview in pieces. So you can see it's different between countries to country or maybe regions to region, even with people of the same commitment, passion to this thing. So I'll say environment and regulations make big difference on what we do when it comes to blogging and journalism in general.
Hmm, interesting, interesting, Bandio, interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at Chemiche and I'm thinking, you're an artist. You act in movies. You've done a couple of them, like Bongoland. You've been a background artist, which is quite a lucrative thing if you can find a work. Do you find that you have stories you'd like to make a movie? Are you thinking of one day maybe you extend from the daily news, mainstream media, into blogging, into vlogging, into making movies, or you just want to settle as an actress and then and a blogger? Do you have any ideas for me in your head, or you just end up the way you are?
That's a good question. I would like to do a lot of acting and I would like to do my own movies. I have a script But money is an issue. When you are making a movie, money is an issue. To make a quality movie, you need people who have the behind the scenes, who can operate that camera, who can do that sound, who can do the acting, who can do the background, who can do the editing. To make a decent movie is a process. It's not just, let me just take my camera and shoot something and that's it. No, it's a process. So, I mean, I have experience in front of the camera, I have experience behind the camera. And going forward, I might do more behind the camera stuff, as you get up there. Yeah, as you get up there, you tend to look more behind the camera than to be in front of the camera. Yeah.
Write a good
But
story. The question is, can you write a good story? Say like that Maumba thing, or I mean, can you write a
yeah,
good
oh
story,
yeah,
a
I could.
screenplay?
Well, I mean, basically, I have the back. I mean, because I have the inside. I could do a script because with very little research, because I was there. And of course, you write better what you know. That's the way it goes. So I mean, based on my life story, I have thousands of stories that I could write and turn into movies.
Yeah, stories and news people. Yeah, media people love stories. So this question, because we need to wind up soon, this question is for all of us here. It's to do with the biggest question in social media, that people are plagiarizing, they're using other people's works. There's no ethics. Say, give an example that there was a death of children a few years ago in Mbulu in North Tanzania, and the photographer took pictures and sent them on Facebook, and some bloggers just used the pictures, didn't cover the children. So stuff like
Mhm.
that prompted the government. I think that was one of the reasons that they put a stop into this freewheeling things, like kind of anarchy thing. So what do you think, as media experienced media people? You've worked over many years, decades. You've been there. What would be what would be
Freddie, remember the scoop?
scoop?
So now it's the 24-hour news cycle, and you want that instant scoop. And that's what the problem is. Because if I don't post this thing now without even thinking about it, somebody else is going to get the credit. So that's what the problem is. The instant scoop. Because before we wait for tomorrow, oh God, who got the scoop? Well, who got the scoop? Fanyakazi did, and which one got the scoop? Then now it's the instant scoop, and it's the and has technology improved, it's by the second scoop. So that's where the regulation and stuff it becomes a problem, and people don't think.
You're right. Probably that's why Instagram is such a good thing for you, Mjengo, because nobody else has put on Sankara thing. You put it there. And
Mm.
speaking of that, instant. Should we all use the instant media? I mean, Bandio, you're a radio guy. Would you wait
Mm.
to come and
So,
announce?
like that Jimmy said, nowadays it seems to be immediacy over accuracy. It's so about who will be the first to report it. But like I say, this has been, to me, it's been like this since when I was in Times FM back in the days. Really, I didn't run with something because there's all stories, and when I went to school, this is what they taught us. Like, there's good stories, there are endless of good story everywhere. We're only lacking storytellers. If you're a good storytellers, if you're a good storyteller, you can tell that story even if it's the day after, and it's still gonna make sense. It's still gonna have solution. You're gonna have everything that you need. You may not have good followers. You will end up with a good story that will. An example, like I said before, my blog is not popular, but I remember I wrote something about Olympics in 2008, right? And then 12 years, it was 12 years later, when the Olympic concluded, somebody was searching something online about Olympics, and I went to my story without reading the, the entire story and checking the dates and everything. He read that story, and this was a journalist who was working, was a sports reporter for BBC. He commented, was like, man, that was fast because this thing just finished today and you had all this conclusion. How did you do that? And I said, did you check the date? Why am I saying this? Is that if you write a good story that
Mhm.
has everything that is needed for that story, it will stay alive all the problem that I talked about in 2008, they were still alive. I think it was 12 years later when this person came in, and because it was not, there was no solution to it, so it's still alive. It still means the same, and I was not chasing time. It was a little bit of research and some um, everything that I saw and what can be done. So I think we don't have to be chasing that scope. We don't have to be immediate over accuracy. All we need to do is just to make sure you do the right thing. We don't have many. And unfortunately for Tanzania, because there's no consequence to it, that's why they were rushing with it. That's why they can go there, get the picture of a 2 years old, I mean, the children, and then post them online because there is no penalty, there is no consequences. And guess what? When they do that, people click, like, subscribe, and do that. They make money. Like I said at the beginning, money changed everything, and look like we're losing ourselves when we're trying to find who we are. We're losing our
Mhm.
culture. We're losing our traditions when we're trying to find some money. And this
Mhm.
is just wider than we can discuss.
Mhm.
Me culture. Mjengwa. Could you,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank
you own it.
thank you very much.
Mm.
This question of immediate of accuracy, for me, it's like I feel very comfortable yeah, because Chemi, I was there. Sometimes I feel like Thomas Sankara, 83. I was young, I could witness that. I'm not really feeling of not having confidence in doing that. So I was there and I can read again and write it with confidence, and I know that it's accurate information. But also, when I was in Ringa, I did research on the farmer Mwamwindi, when the guy who killed the regional commissioner, Krelu. So I did a research and I could write a story on Mwamwindi and people could follow that. But then I saw in the social media people were like copying and narrating the stories. Well, for me, it's okay. Since that only that they should mention, they should credit my name, but that I know one day when I'm going to write a book about Mwamindi, it will be of authenticity because I was the one who did research and I have other information that no one else have them. And it's very important that we do research and we can write with accuracy instead of thinking that you have to do it immediate. And for us who have been in the media for quite a long time, we shouldn't jump in this kind of trying to write whatever it comes in front of you. And now with the era of conspiracy theories, you see a lot of stories that really are distorted. Is you feel like, yeah, we are now heading into really dangerous zone coming to when you talk about social media.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. You were speaking about the murder or the assassination of Dr. Cleroux in 1971, right? Um, so research in such things which are not known is very big. Like somebody researched on the killing of Patrice Lumumba and found out his body was burnt in sulfuric acid and wrote a book. But unfortunately, that person was not African. He was a Belgian guy. He was a historian. So we kind of know. Even I was not. I was very little boy. We know now that Lumumba was tortured with his two ministers and killed. And so the thing of research is not something that the untrained ear hears. They hear money. They hear me. I wanna be seen. They don't hear that professionalism. So what would you do now? Would you keep on training people? What would you call for other bloggers to do? Say, or media people. What would you call for? More training, or what should be done? Should we start with who shook his head first? Bandio, you shook your head first. What should we
Yeah,
do?
I think first of all, this needs to come from the top. And I'll tell an example that there's no incentive now in Tanzania to do research, and actually, you will lose if you do that much research, whether working in the media and other stuff. Why? Like I say, the copyright thing and everything. When I was working in the radio, and I started this very early, I used to just wake up in the morning and I'll go trying to get all these stories because I was working for Times FM. It was a small radio, it's like in Dar es Salaam, not even the entire area in Dar es Salaam. And I wanted to get those local stories because my show was at 6 a.m., the same time where BBC Deutsche Welle, Voice of America. So the only way to be relevant and different was just to do those local story and to make sure it's a local radio. You do local stories. But to them, I was just like spending too much money because I needed a recorder and a printer. I needed to go and search maybe a car to go around. This was different from the guy who was just the DJ who would come in with just a backpack and the CDs and stuff, and then they will play. And actually, back then, some of them they used to play for free so they can go get some gigs somewhere else. So I was not. I was pretty much they were spending money on me to do a 2-hour show while they can have 4 or 5 DJs coming in, and they didn't even have to pay them. Those DJs used to bring music in and everything, so it was cheaper to have DJs than people who will do research and do really original stories. And you see it right now because there's no copyright playing music. It's like 90%, 70%, maybe 60% of all the programs are just music, and some of them, most of them are just automated. Why? Because there's no cost for it, and people who want to do research and everything, you won't get support because you can easily be replaced by something music related. If you want to write on the newspaper nowadays, where very few still staying like Daily News and others, but people they rather have one big picture of this famous guy, celebrity, with a little scandalish headline, and they can make money just by that. Than you going to Iringa and get the story, like whatever Magic does, to get that story, it might take you a week or two. And by that time, the scandals are all over the place. It's like every day. So I think the journalists, yes, we need to keep doing what we're doing. Like I say, if you go to my blog, the things say better write to yourself and have no public than write for the public and have no self. This is what I believe. When I write, I put it in there because I want to be there, and this is me for the public. But if you're hired and they just can't take your stuff. They reject everything, and you look like they're losing money after you. You will gradually change, and you're going to end up being like them. So this is not only about uh, training; it's also about rules and laws and regulation on how they can stop this thing. It's painful. It's just beyond. I can say it,
Agonizing.
it hurts.
Agonizing. Chemi Mponda, what is your thoughts on this agonizing era we're in?
Well, I mean, the newspaper basically is a thing of the past because if you look like here in the United States, how many newspapers can you actually go out now and buy a hard copy of? So the newspapers are basically a thing of the past. They're dying out. The journalism that we trained for is basically dying out. The people, the this 2021 people, the younger people, they want immediacy, so they want their Instagram, they want whatever. They don't want to wait to see something in tomorrow's paper. So for instance, back in the day, if we wanted news, we didn't have the internet. We had to wait for the newspaper to come out. So now that's gone. Now I can just take my cell phone. I just type in what's happening, and all of a sudden, 100 different articles or links to stuff comes up. So I mean, we have to move with the times, but at the same time, we need regulation. I mean, especially Tanzania, because I mean, this business of just putting anything that you want, it's you're infringing on people's copyrights. You're not following rules. For example, posting pictures of dead bodies, using young children's name, which you're not supposed to. I mean, even here in the US, you cannot write about young children. You have to say unidentified teen. You cannot use their name like if they're under 18. So I mean, regulation, like Bandio said, is definitely important. There has to be some kind of regulation. We cannot just have people doing things, as you say in Tanzania, shagalabaga, because in the end, people are going to get hurt.
Yeah. Is it all over Africa the same as well? I'm wondering. I'm thinking, is it the same way? And how do we make a living from this? How do we survive? Because in the old days, a journalist will write a book or publish their old articles. Like the days when a journalist, like say, if I pluck out in the air, Ernest Hemingway is a famous journalist. He went to the Spanish Civil War. He fought there, and he wrote books. He wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls, and it's all about the Spanish Civil War. Can we do the same nowadays? Can we make a living? Can we make bucks? Can we make money from what we do? We just do it for the love. How do we make a living? Majid, it's for you to
Yeah,
start.
it's very good question. I think for me, it's more of the passion. I'm not thinking much of the money. And I see today when I'm living in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam and traveling quite much. I'm born in the 60s, so we of the Arusha Declarations generation. Uh, I see we have lost generation of the 80s who are really questioning, they want to understand the history, their roots. I see that in my Facebook, my Instagram, I get more new followers who are born in the 80s, who haven't been in school really much of the history. So they want to know from us who have been there during those times. Uh, I see if you be yourself, be original, there is a need of this kind of knowledge in the society. And I see it's more of the lifelong learning. It's a learning process. And if you are original, if you are yourself and you have the history, you're not shy of telling the stories. In the end, it can can make money. You can make money out of it because it's a really growing number of youth born in the 80s who want to know what happened in the past.
And if I may add, Fred,
Sure. Candide.
from what Chemi and Majid said, I think we don't have to lose everything. Yes, uh, things are changing, technology is coming, but in Swahili we have these two words, kuna mabadiliko na maendeleo. You know, mabadiliko yote sio maendeleo, ila maendeleo yote ni mabadiliko. So people need to think that way. Kwamba yes, kuna story. We don't have to wait until maybe 8 p.m. to get the for the news bulletin, but as it happens, you can give that snippet. If it's a developing story, take it like that. We see that with Washington Post, with all these big news media. I think we need to learn from people who are doing it best and take it there. We don't say that, oh yeah, just cut it off, wait until news bulletin at 8, like the Chemi said. We still need to keep all those rules, regulations, ethics, and everything as we move with this internet and the chop chop era, so that if something's happening, just be there. Say, hey, there's this accident. You don't have to show dead bodies for us to know that there's an accident. We see the wreckage. There's this accident. This is what's happening. We'll come back in 10 minutes with updates. We're here. Those are happening. You see, in the US, with all the shootings that's happening almost 24/7, why we don't see those dead bodies and everything. And these people had all these cell phones and everything, and Instagram even before us. So we need to learn. There's something that we need to learn as we move away from traditional news, when you move away from blogging, whatever we call it, the past, we still need to stick with ethics, humanity, and rules and regulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much there. It's a big discussion and it should be endless. We should invite you again to do more. It's a start and your brains are just fiery. Thank you. So can we have final word, any final lines, just very briefly from three of you, what you think about the whole subject of blogging and social media in general? Some people are very critical of social media. They think it's a exaggerate stuff, like COVID-19 and all of that. Well, can you have final words? Who should we start with? Majid, final words? You ready?
Yeah, yeah, as again I said, as a learning process, it's a lifelong learning, and for me, having knowledge, theoretical knowledge without a practical experience is like emptiness, and having theoretical knowledge without having practical knowledge without theories is more of the blindness. So even what we are doing within the social media, we have to consider that. Thank you very much.
Okay, if I'll go a second, I'll say I believe in what I put like in my blog. The name itself, the way you see the problem is the problem. And the catchphrase is better write for yourself and have no public than write for the public and have no self. Actually, that's a quote from Cyril Connolly. Uh, what that means, know yourself, identify yourself. Let people see something in you. stick with it, because that's what will go away. Don't lose yourself when you're trying to find who you are. Uh, be there, do it. If you do a good job, it will stick, it will stay, and people will appreciate, other than just chasing fame and everything. So yeah, yeah.
Be honest. Yes,
Yes,
Chemiche.
yes. Yeah, I think blogs are a good thing, because a lot more stuff is people can write stuff, like the newspaper. We couldn't. There were some things which never made the newspaper. Thousands of stuff didn't make the newspaper. So I think blogs are a good way of getting stuff which you would never have seen before out there in the public. So I think blogs are a good thing, but let's just bring some regulation into it so that there is some sort of ethics and humanity in them.
Humanity. That's the word. Yeah. Not chappy chappy culture. Chap chap. That's a Swahili for Hari Hari and
Yeah, yeah.
Harin. I hope to see you again soon, and I hope to watch you, and I hope the viewers will enjoy this and they'll follow you. We're gonna type your links so people can follow your work. Well done. I really admire your work on ALTV on behalf of JG Adamson and myself on ALTV. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so
Thank
much Majid Mjengwa, Chemiche Mponda,
Thank you very
and Mubelo Bandio. Karibuni
you.
sana.
Thank you.
Thank,
Thank you.
thank,
Mhm.
thank